What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I am back to review the series finale to Succession, one of my all-time favorite shows. The episode was called With Open Eyes. It was directed by Mark Mylod and written by Jesse Armstrong. And I'm going to do something special to mark this occasion because I think Logan Roy would approve. I'm going to open up a bottle of single malt, a bottle of Talisker, which a buddy of mine got me fired up about, or I'm going to at least try if I can get this thing open. I'm ruining my big dramatic moment. I might have to do a cross dissolve to, actually, here we go. Boom, boom, boom. But when you're talking about the season finale of one of your all-time favorite shows, it's very easy to overlook its flaws or not discuss them, and I am going to have some critiques, but first and foremost, let's just raise a glass. Actually, let me get out of the shade. Let's just raise a glass to Logan Roy, to Jesse Armstrong, and the entire cast and crew of Succession. It has been one hell of a ride. Just pure gasoline. Fumes coming out of my mouth. Love single malt, but usually I just sip it. But let's dive into this episode now that I've got some liquid courage flowing through me. So the episode might have been called With Open Eyes, but maybe the subtitle should have been We're All Bullshit, as Roman says over and over again towards the end about him and Shiv and Kendall. And goddamn, I don't even know where to start with this episode. First and foremost, let's just talk about my emotional response. I was standing in front of my TV, like pacing and shifting my weight back and forth. I couldn't even sit while watching it. And I was just absolutely riveted. I think the only time in the entire episode where it kind of lost me or I felt like the tone had been broken was when Kendall, Shiv, and Roman were making the meal fit for a king and just like spitting and pouring Tabasco sauce and just putting everything in a blender. It just kind of, maybe this is not the case for everybody else, but for me, it broke the tension and suspense, and I wanted to kind of like continue biting my nails right up until the very end. But that's really my only criticism. Otherwise, I was just absolutely enthralled from start to finish. But after watching 4 amazing seasons of this show, the question is going to be for a lot of people, like, is it as good as The Sopranos? Is it as good as The Wire? Like, pick your favorite show of the last 25 years. Is it in that kind of collection of, or is it in those halls of greatness? And I would say yes. But even though I have the utmost admiration for this show, there is something a little bittersweet about seeing a final episode where perhaps part of me was, at least in my imagination, expecting something so explosive that maybe no writer or director or cast could ever possibly deliver on that. So I think I'm going to have to revisit this episode, but I think it's normal for people to want to hotly debate the series finale for a kick-ass show. I mean, people are still debating the finale of The Sopranos, and that thing ended, like in 2007? I can't remember when it ended, but it was, a long-ass time ago, and people are still discussing it. And I think people will still be discussing Succession for a long time. I think a lot of people fell out during like season 3, but I think once word starts to spread, people will be like, you know what, I got to go back and finish the journey. For my part, I'm really looking forward to just taking my time and watching all 4 seasons again and just savoring each and every individual episode. But let's just roll up our sleeves and get into things because there were some really juicy moments. Even though the plot was more or less pretty straightforward, it's all about, do we have the votes? Like, do we have the votes for the Gojo deal, or do we have the votes for possibly Kendall taking his dad's place and running Waystar Royco? And every single scene was all about like trying to persuade people to come around to a certain point of view. And we see that Roman is basically in recovery mode with his mother, across the ocean, feeling a little humiliated about all the bandages on his face and claiming that the fight that he got in, that he won. But I have to admit, I think I like the first half of the episode more, where we see the kind of the plotting and the scheming. And I think this show always finds a very special place when you've got Kendall, Roman, and Shiv in a room together, either just fighting like cats and dogs or plotting and scheming to work together. And we got examples of both on multiple occasions throughout this episode, because early on it looks like Shiv is going to get the gig, and she's having meetings with Lucas Matson and referring to Tom as like an interchangeable modular part that can be kind of applied as needed. I mean, it's a very dismissive, kind of condescending way to refer to. I mean, admittedly, she calls him an empty suit on many occasions throughout all 4 seasons. Her relationship with Tom has always been and always will be complex, even right up to the very last shot of them driving away with the two of them kind of lightly holding hands. And holy hell, I don't imagine that their fights will be at an end, but at a minimum, at least that child will perhaps grow up with both parents around. And they have so many great beats together throughout the episode. Like when she calls him early on, she's about to fly over the ocean, and she's kind of smiling and trying to put her best foot forward because she's obviously got a full head of steam and she's feeling strong and confident. And she asks him if there are any positives about the nightmare they've shared. And then we see tears coming to her eyes if she asks if he's interested in a real relationship. And I feel like that's about as vulnerable as she'll ever allow herself to be. And he tells her that he honestly doesn't know. And as Shiv and Roman and Kendall gather at their mother's place, I mean, oh my God, I guess no wonder that they're so fucked up, because not only was their father Logan Roy, but their mother Caroline, she's a little bit of an unconventional, unusual person. Like when she talks about how eyes revolt her, and she refers to them as face eggs. I mean, this is somebody who is emotionally unavailable or emotionally inaccessible. She's not a very warm person, but in her own way, she does at least pretend to love her children. And in her own way, she's loving this opportunity to play mother to Roman, because it's probably the first time in his life where she's tried to kind of look after him. But what made the first half of the episode so compelling for me is how we see back in New York, where we have Lukas Matsson and Tom basically doing like the world's most high-stakes job interview you can possibly imagine, as Tom's trying to make the case for what he brings to the table. And he's saying, oh, I squeeze costs and I boost profits and I'm a grinder and I'm a worrier. He's saying all these things. And clearly he's somebody who's not going to try to exert his view or force his views. He's going to be somebody there to kind of exert the will of Lukas Matsson. And that's when Lukas acknowledges to him that Shiv, he's getting cold on Shiv and how she has so many ideas and she's so aggressive. But he feels like he has enough ideas. He doesn't need more ideas. As he says, I know everything, which is exactly how like these tech giants tend to think. They tend to think that they're gods. And he also admits that he wants to fuck her a bit. And seeing the reaction on Tom's face, I mean, this is a guy who's his ambitions come before his feelings and his relationships. And he basically admits that he wants Tom to be there to be his pain sponge, like clearing up Lucas's schedule to focus on the things that interest him. And then they decide to do some shots. And this is when things get really interesting, because speaking of shots, let's pour one more glass of single malt just to make sure that I'm on the same wavelength as all the characters. I'm not going to chug this one. I'm going to sip it and enjoy it and savor it. But as Tom is telling Greg that everything's going to be fine, but he's probably going to get castrated on pay, but he could probably keep him. Greg, I mean, he's like the ultimate mover and shaker in his own kind of clumsy way, decides to turn on his phone and starts recording and translating the Swedish to English of the conversation that's going on in the bar. And he realizes that Shiv is about to get betrayed. And he puts in a call to Kendall and basically says, like, I've got something amazing. Will you do something amazing for me? And Kendall's like, yes, obviously I'll do something incredible, like blah, blah, blah. You know, Greg's not particularly good at this, but Greg tells him he wants to quad it up in his own words. And this is where the episode allows us a brief, like 5 to 10 minute period where we actually feel like everything might turn out okay, if people even wanted to see any of these 3 kids in charge. But I never assumed that this that the show would give us something resembling a happy ending. That's not its style. But if you were rooting for one of them or any of them to take charge, you feel like, all right, well, maybe the 3 of them, like individually, they're all so flawed and so broken, but together they can take on the world. And we see how Kendall explains to Shiv that she's getting totally screwed. She's in a panic, starts calling all these people. They're not picking up. And she sees the draft of the announcement of what's going down, and she sees that the spot for CEO has been left blank. So she knows she's getting screwed. And as they start to throw down, they speak very frankly about their strengths and weaknesses, how Roman looks very weak. I mean, Roman's always been a little of an odd person, to put it mildly, and Shiv was just on the other side. So obviously, Kendall, huge surprise, thinks that he is the obvious choice. But hang on one sec. But one of my favorite moments was when Roman and Shiv are having a little private moment while Kendall goes off and swims into the water. He's big into water for some reason, but they start joking about how if they tried to kill him, like how would he respond? And they start doing these spot-on impersonations of be like, oh, like anyway, I can't impersonate Kendall, but most siblings can imitate their other siblings or members of the family very, very well. And so it just felt so genuine. Like those three actors, I imagine there are times where they actually do feel like fucking siblings, or they're just really goddamn good actors. But Jesse Armstrong, brilliant writer that he is, no matter what's going down, he always finds a way to insert little teeny tiny jokes in there. And I don't know if y'all heard this, or if maybe it was mumbled under the character's breath, so maybe I didn't hear it quite correctly. But as the three of them are driving away, the mother kind of mumbles under her breath, "Go away." And I was like, wow, is she saying that to her new husband, or is she saying that to her kids? Like, "Come again when you can't stay so long," which was an expression that my grandfather used to like to use. And then the new husband says, "Fucking waste of time." Like his whole big pitch got interrupted by all these shenanigans that are going on. But I felt that was so incredible, so heartbreakingly English that the mother would be saying, "Go away," as her children drive off. Yeah, there's not a lot of love in her heart. And as they got back to America, all my predictions about this episode were completely, totally a waste or in vain. Like there were all sorts of I guess, people were hypothesizing that maybe Kendall would form an alliance with Jimenez and that they would win the election and that he would be victorious. And some people thought that Jerry was going to end up being the CEO. Like people were making all these crazy predictions. But the only thing we really hear about Mencken in this episode is how there's been a Wisconsin court hiccup and that he might not make it. And then boom, he's out of the picture. And for the rest of the episode, it's just about the central characters. And we get this incredible scene with Connor as he's basically trying to get rid of all of his father's belongings. But as they're basically trying to divide up all their father's belongings and what they're going to give away and who wants what, they have this incredible scene where they watch this footage on a TV where they have a virtual dinner with their father. And it's footage where Jerry, Carl, Frank, Connor, and Carrie are all hanging out. And they're like kind of having a little contest where they're exchanging like limericks and songs and rhymes. And of course, they're all devilishly clever. And I loved how even as Carl was trying to sing a song, how Logan's like, "Oh, like you're ruining it." Like critical to his last breath. But I felt like Brian Cox, obviously world-class actor. He's so goddamn good. He's been doing incredible work for fucking decades. I mean, if people want to know what I'm talking about, go back and watch Manhunter. That was like the first great Hannibal Lecter movie, but he's absolutely devastating in that. But it was great to have Brian Cox in here. I guess if you wanted to criticize season 4, you could say there was too little Brian Cox. But for me, as much as I love him and like respect him and admire him, killing him off early, it wouldn't have been as devastating if they'd done it late in the season. It had to come early in the season. That's just my opinion. And there was one more fantastic scene with Tom and Shiv that I forgot to mention earlier, but Tom is trying to pretend as if he's shocked that Shiv has been betrayed. And then finally, he just admits he's Matson's choice. And I feel like Shiv had many great glares across all 4 seasons, but then we get the absolute motherload of Shiv glares, and she just says, "Good luck, motherfucker." And then she's all business with her brothers. And at that point, I just felt like, as a team, they're unbeatable. Kendall's going to prevail. And emotionally, that probably would have worked for me tonight. But it would have been a little obvious. And I think in the days and weeks to come, I would have thought, oh my God, like after all these seasons and all these double crosses and all these battles and all these fights, that they went with the most obvious choice to take over. And I feel like it might have ended up being too predictable, even if it would have been emotionally satisfying at the time, but my emotions were just totally just swept up. There's so much incredible forward momentum at that moment. But I should have remembered the previous 4 seasons that there are always double crosses, and there are always, people are always having a change of heart or stabbing each other in the back. And that's obviously what happens once we finally get to the board meeting. And what was hilarious is how once Tom realizes that the siblings have had an entire evening to kind of get their ducks in a row, he confronts Greg. And they proceed to indulge in a little slap fight. I mean, first, Tom slaps Greg. Greg slaps him back. I feel like the whole underlying subplot of this entire show has been leading toward this big moment. Then they eventually throw down, start punching. And for my money, that was better than the throwdown between the Hound and the Mountain in the series finale to Game of Thrones. People were just so excited about the Hound and the Mountain finally having it out, and the battle was what it was. But give me Tom versus Greg any day. I found that to be intensely satisfying, especially, I'm just going to cut to the end, where Greg is trying to congratulate Tom after he has prevailed. And Tom just has this great scene where he says, "You're a fucking piece of shit, but I got you." I mean, these two guys, once again, Tom is destined to be in a relationship with Shiv in perpetuity. And Greg is destined to keep Gregging for Tom forevermore. And as far as the actual board meeting goes, I'm going to need to see this episode again to fully digest and process what went down and whether or not it really works for me. It would have been too predictable and too easy if they just had a vote, Kendall won, and they all went home. That would have been boring in hindsight. Whether or not I completely, totally embrace the way that Shiv had a last-minute change of heart and decided, look, you've killed somebody, you would be terrible at this, and how Roman pretty much admits, like, well, you'd be terrible, she'd be terrible, I'd be terrible. Like, once he just recognizes that none of them are really cut out. But it's like, is Tom any more cut out? I mean, once again, Tom is an empty suit. And he wasn't like born unto royalty the way that the other kids were. Like he didn't look upon it like his inheritance. But I don't know if the show made a really strong, compelling case that Lucas Matson or Tom or any of these other characters are any better than Kendall, Shiv, and Roman. If Kendall, Shiv, and Roman are nothing but bullshit, then the entire cast is, even if I completely love and adore them. But once again, I thought Jerry was going to get the top slot. When I saw Jerry coming in and Roman having a little panic attack, I was like, oh my God, is she going to reveal the dick pics? Like, what's going to go down? And Roman just starts falling to pieces all over again. Like, he's embracing Kendall, rips his stitches open. Clearly Roman would have been a rotten choice. But with the vote tied at 6-6 and Shiv decides to change her mind, I felt like both Kendall and Shiv showed their worst qualities. Like, they showed how they're a little capricious and that they are just a little petty, a little vindictive. And depending upon which characters you were kind of rooting for, I mean, I've always had like an unapologetic, like fully open and acknowledged massive crush on Shiv. I think Shiv is one of the sexiest characters in like television history, to put it mildly. And if you go on YouTube and look up like Shiv Roy sexy, people have made all these crazy highlight videos with like theme music and so on and so forth. It's just absolutely bananas. But it is a little bittersweet when you have a show that you love so much and characters that you love so much, where you have some of your favorite characters showing their worst qualities right in the final stretch of the show. So once again, I'm still wrestling with my conflicted emotions over how well that scene kind of played out. And then the rest of it, they just kind of, just let things play out as they should. We got Greg being pointed out as the Judas by Lucas during the signing and the picks. And we got Kendall going for a long, lonely walk along the Hudson. I actually know that park where he goes. I should have gone jogging there a few times. But I thought he was going to throw himself in the Hudson or jump off the building or whatever the case might be. But yeah, no big suicide. I guess I was expecting something just like a giant thunderbolt, like something really cataclysmic. But yeah, it's just going to be business as usual. And this is totally random what I'm about to say, but I'm just scanning my notes. And I totally forgot to mention it earlier, but when I was giving my send-off to Brian Cox, if you're ever curious about the proper pronunciation of all the various single malts out there are a lot of kind of douchey, quote-unquote, like, or at least people who think they're connoisseurs who are not, who will invent all sorts of elaborate ways to pronounce their favorite single malts. And one of the big ones is the single malt called Laphroaig. Oh, no, it's Lafroy, or they will come up with a variety of strange pronunciations. According to Brian Cox, it is Laphroaig, as I've always been saying it. So to all the kind of, I guess all the posers out there who love their single malt, Brian Cox is the final authority when it comes to Scottish pronunciation. And speaking of which, just gargle that shit. Woo! Holy moly! I should have brought a bottle of Laphroaig for this video, but I checked my liquor cabinet at 2 bottles of Talisker, so that's what we're going with in any event. So what else do we got on my notes? I'm starting to feel my buzz, so I probably should just wrap this up because I'm going to start just rambling incoherently. I'll just say that it's been a pleasure and a privilege and an honor to sing this show's praises. I think Jesse Armstrong now is my uncontested, undisputed favorite writer working in television. And no matter what he chooses to do next, as a writer, who knows, maybe as a director, but although he and Mark Mylod work together so well. My first and only love is movies, so of course part of me is thinking, make a movie, but I imagine they'll probably have a home with HBO. As long as HBO exists, there will be a spot for Jesse Armstrong and Mark Mylod. But I look forward to hearing what everybody thought in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing if everybody is like wrestling with as many conflicted emotions as I am. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that notification bell to be notified for future content. I'll definitely be back next week to review The Idol on HBO. Who the hell knows if it can compete with Succession? But at a minimum, apparently it's very provocative and very controversial and very sexual. And anyway, everybody's saying that it's horrible for all these reasons. That actually makes me think that it might actually be good. But for me, I don't comment on things until I've seen them, or at least I try not to comment on things until I've seen them. So until next week, but thank you so much for your support. I hope everybody has a great week. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.